You are here listening to Her Red Boots podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Gore, here to share my heart with you. Let's do this.
Welcome back, friends. It's so good to have you come back and visit and just share our hearts together. And so I'm going to open up with prayer. God, thank you so much for being here. We invite you into this space. We ask that you would personally just speak to us and encourage us, that you would minister to us in specific and tangible ways. Thank you for blessing my friends in the midst of summer, that wherever they find themselves in this moment and from this moment forward in this day, that you would just encourage them and bless them in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. So last weekend, I was on a fun wedding trip. One of my close and sweet and dear, cousins of my in-laws side got married, and so I went to the wedding. And so I kind of want to just piece through some of the excitement of what God did, because I was asking him and joining my faith to say, okay, God, you're sending me in this place and we're here to do something good. And what does that look like and how can we do that? And so as I'm getting ready to leave and everything's in line as far as what's going to happen when we get to the airport, and my in-laws are going to come and we were going to get a rental car and we were going to go forth, whatever. Well, on my way to the airport, my in-laws were stuck in West Virginia, and then they got delayed in DC. And so all of those circumstances all of a sudden changed for me. And I was so I was riding with my mom, and even that, honestly, that changed the day before. Okay, my mom was going to take me to the airport. And I was telling her, I was okay, I don't know what I'm going to do once I get there. And she's like, look, your niece that's in Georgia is actually driving to Tampa today. Call her. And I was okay, well, I'll just see if she could pick me up. Anyway, I call her, and then she's yeah, I'm coming in right at that same time that you're landing. I'll swing in and grab you and we can have lunch together and all that. And I was God, you seriously already planned and orchestrated, knowing the difficulties that lied ahead, and you made a way. And I just found it so it just moved in my heart, how God works and how much he's involved in the details of our lives. And I want that to encourage your heart that God is working before you even ask. It says in Matthew 6, I believe that before you even ask, the Father knows what you have need of. And I was just he takes such good care of us that he can orchestrate it. And the day was actually so incredible because she came and swung in and grabbed me. And I wasn't even thinking I was going to get to see her at all. And now I'm sitting in the car with her, and we're getting to have conversation. I'm getting to encourage her and vice versa. And we ended up at the beach and spent time at the beach. And so God was doing something that I didn't even foresee that I needed him to do. And I just want to encourage you that God does that you should start looking for God to move in your situations, in the midst of the obstacles, and the midst of all of the things that could throw up challenges. Are you saying, God, what are you doing? And I want to start living that way. Okay, if there's an obstacle or a challenge in my way, then saying, okay, this is an opportunity for a miracle. This is an opportunity for me to see what God can do as I put my faith and trust in him. And I do. It says if we give him our plans, if we acknowledge him in all of our ways, then he makes our paths straight. And just to recognize that God is invested. He's involved in our lives. And so through this trip, I just was God, I want to see divine opportunities. I want to see you do stuff that I haven't seen before. And so in my mind's eye and in my spirit, I'm looking for that. And yet I'm doing life, just having fun. And like anybody, when they're as close to the beach and you live in the middle of the US, you want to go to the beach. And so the next day I went to the beach, we're hanging out, we're doing all the stuff, just praying in different moments, saying, God, what are you doing here? Is there anybody? And nothing, came of that. And then we're leaving. And as we're leaving, I caught eye to eye with this woman. And I was just okay, that was kind of strange. And we walked past, but I felt so stirred. I should go pray for her. So I was with my sister-in-law, Domby. Shout out to Domby. And I was just like, just wait a second. And she's like, what's going on? What's wrong? And I'm like, nothing's wrong. I just felt like I was supposed to go pray for that lady. And you know how you have those moments where you feel like God's telling you to do something and you have to pause yourself and be like, am I going to do it or not? And like, there's like that, they actually say it's like a 6 seconds. If you don't make the decision in 6 seconds, you're most likely not to do it. Like you have to be bold, like really quick out the gate. And it was funny because she's like, no way, I felt the same thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we got to go pray for her. And so I like turned around and just like started walking back to her. And so I get to like her umbrella tent and I'm like, I'm sorry, excuse me. Like, I just felt like the Lord said I was supposed to come over and pray for you. And she's like, I saw you looking at me. And I was like, okay, well, the Lord saw you. And so we got to pray over her. And like, it was a really neat exchange. I think she was actually really blown away that somebody would just randomly pray for her, because it doesn't always happen. People aren't always like willing. And she was a believer, and she was telling us some of the things and like going on in her daughter's life and how her daughter was going to step out and preach her first sermon and all of these things. Like there was just like lots of different things. And Domby and I got to like just stand there with this lady and pray for her and for her daughter and for their family. And so it was like a really cool moment. And so we walk away and I'm like processing it with the Lord, like, okay, Lord, what were you doing? And just felt like the Lord like really said, like through that moment, that the trajectory of her life, her daughter's life actually was like, it would shift out of that moment. And I was just like, God, you are doing something so cool. And so then later on, Dobby was talking to me. She's like, I wonder, like, she was talking about that same thought. Like, I wonder what that would look like if we wouldn't have stopped and nothing have changed? Would anything have happened? Like, what difference did that make? And I was telling her how I processed with the Lord about that trajectory, like thought. And she was like, that's so cool. And so when you come into the Word and you like start reading John 5, there's a man by the pool of Bethsaida, and he's laying there, and he's been there for a long time, and like life happens. And this is kind of the same thought of like us living life. We like go in and out of different places. We do things. And it just so happens that Jesus was walking into that moment, into this pool. There are lots of people there. And he sees this man and he walks up to him and he says, do you want to be healed? And the guy, like, there's this exchange of conversation. And at the end point, like the man picks up his mat and he walks and he like completely different. Like the trajectory of that man's life from laying beside the pool, hoping to get tossed in or pushed in or somebody help him in, that something might change. And all of a sudden, like God just like through one moment of time changes it. And I was thinking about us, like in that sense of like, okay, that happened. You could see it. Like it was actually like real, like the man's body completely restored. He's walking. He's actually out. And like later through that chapter, Jesus is saying that he goes and he finds him in the temple. And he actually tells him like sin no more and like keep moving forward. Like there's an exchange of salvation that happens in that. And so his life and in the, I mean, healing is wonderful, but like soul healing is even more like awesome. And so like when you think about just one moment of time and how Jesus interacted with him, and that's kind of what I was looking for. There's so many people that come up to Jesus and like plead with him, like heal me or deliver me or do this, or like they're pressing in, they're touching the hem of his garment. And as you read the stories, it's like one person after the next comes towards him. But what about those that don't know him? What about those that are sitting there? And even that man, it literally says like when they asked him who did this, he's like, I don't know who he was. Like there's something to say of that, like that in the midst of just life, that we have an opportunity to hear the heart of the Father, to respond to the heart of the Father, God's heart. It says that his desire is that all would come into the knowledge of Christ, that all would be saved. His desire and will is to heal us. So as Jesus like sought him out, he moved into that space. So he's teaching us something. Like Jesus is showing us a picture of doing life. Just life. Like you do life. You do life a lot of places. You do lots of different things. You go on vacations. You go to a wedding. You You go to the store to get your groceries. You go to your job every day. But there's opportunities, I believe, that God, when we're like listening and attentive, and I do think it's really awesome when like two people like walk alongside of each other and like step into a moment of ministry. It definitely assures you with boldness, or gives you a confidence that's different than just walking up by yourself. But Jesus was there and he was doing that. And so I feel like for us, like through what God can do, that you have to see the bigger picture sometimes. Like, and I feel like Jesus could see that bigger picture of this man's life, like what would happen, him healed, him restored, him living for Jesus. Like the trajectory was so much greater. And for us to see that, to say, okay, prayer is like that. Asking the Father to move on someone's behalf, stepping into someone's situation, hearing what's going on, and releasing the power of God over their life, and asking God to do the impossible, asking him to move mountains on somebody else's behalf. Like, it's just so incredibly awesome. Like, I don't know. I walked away. I was like, that was so cool. It was so much fun too. It's so much fun to like hear God's heart for someone and then just like minister life to them, encourage them. And even the lady, she's like, can we just stop and take a picture? She's like, my family's not even going to like believe that this happened. I have to have a picture of evidence. Like, and in reality, it was funny because like I'm from Wisconsin and my sister-in-law is from Ohio, and she's asking us that, and she's looking at us like, and you're sitting in Tampa? Like, how is this possible? Like, because of God. God knows how to get you into the right location at the right time in the right space. You have to be attentive. As sheep, you hear his voice. And then it's like not just hearing, it's actually being obedient. Like stepping into that and saying, okay, God, I'm going to pause what I'm doing. Nothing's more important than doing the Lord's work. And so I'm going to step into that space. So then I want to take you into the next story of my trip, because God had just like such beautiful things orchestrated. And so I ended up I was going there to a Nigerian wedding. And like, there are some incredible pictures out there of me and my Nigerian wedding garb. But it was very flashy and very yellow and all the things. And so we go to the wedding's happening, all the jazz, whatever, all that glorious space of what the Lord did there. And maybe you don't know this about me, but I'm not hugely adventurous when it comes to food. I have a box. I like to stay close to that box. There's every once in a while I'll be like, I don't know, that sounds good. And then I get it. Like I was like at a coffee shop the other day, I was like, oh, lemonade sounds good. I guess I'll get it. And I'm like, I don't know why I got that. I hate lemonade. I don't know. Sometimes I step outside that box and I'm like, I confuse myself. But they're serving all the Nigerian food. And yes, I had a little bit of it. But when we left, I was hungry because I didn't really eat very much of it. This is part of the story. This is important. So we're leaving and I'm with my in-laws. I'm not driving. They are. And I'm like, yeah, I'm hungry. Like, is there any way maybe we could stop? And they like time passes and we pass the Culver's and I was like, oh, a hamburger would have been good, but whatever. And then they're like, right after we passed that, they're like, yeah, we'll stop if you want. And I was like, awesome. And like, I looked on my phone, like the very next turn was to a Taco Bell. And I was like, that's easy. It doesn't require a lot of whatever. So we'll just go there. So I was like, Taco Bell is like in like 200 feet, like turn right, like, so we turn into this Taco Bell and Dobby and I go in and we're wearing the exact same thing. That's like Nigerian, the under thing of the Nigerian garb. And it like, you could like go dress. That's what it looked like. That was yellow with sequins. And the guy behind the counter was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And Dobby was like, no, you have not seen the whole thing. And so she runs out to the car and gets like the headdress and the rest of the attire. And there's two girls in that Taco Bell, and they're sitting at a table, like, in the restaurant. And, like, we're being loud and kind of obnoxious, I would say, in our, like, excitement. And they're like, no way! Like, we're going to Nigeria tomorrow to a wedding. And I was like, for real? Like, that's so wild. So we walk over and we were, like, talking about the wedding, all the things. It was, like, excitement, like, that's so cool, And they call my name for the food. And so I like walk away from the table, like, have fun, bye, And as I'm walking away, I'm just having a conversation with the Lord. I'm like, God, like, that's really wild. first of all, that we're in this like Taco Bell and like that they're going to a Nigerian wedding and we just came from one. Like, what are the chances of that happening? I'm like, God, is there something you're wanting to do? Because that just seems too like specific. And I felt so stirred, like I was supposed to go over and ask them if we could pray for them. And I have no knowledge of anything of them except that they're going to this wedding. And so, there is that space of like feeling uncomfortable because you just never know what the other side will respond like or whatever. But I'm like, okay, Lord, I'll do it. So I walk up to them. I'm like, I know this is kind of weird, but could I pray for your trip? And they're like, are you guys Christians? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, no way, we are too. Like, and they're like, we would love for you to pray for our trip. And so we got to pray over them. God moved like prophetically over them through me, and just like the ministry of God in their lives and what God was doing in their lives. And it's just the same. One of the girls actually had flown from Sacramento, California to Tampa to go to Nigeria with her friend. And Dobby's from Ohio and I'm from Wisconsin. And we all end up in this random Taco Bell, and God was doing a work. And he was doing a great work in that space. And I just want to give note and like honor to him that like how he can know exactly where you are, know exactly what you need, and like to meet you with random strangers and encounter him. And I just was thinking through the word, and the same thought, like Jesus is walking to the well. He's thirsty. He's like, guys, go into town, go get something to eat. Like, this is like life back then. And yet he walks up to this woman and says, like, can you get me a drink? And, and there's whole exchange at the woman of the well. And that's in John 4. So if you want to read through that passage, like there's a fullness to the whole of like what God did in her life. But what a testimony. We read through that testimony and are like, God, that's so cool. Like, and the woman's life and how God prophetically spoke over her and said, well, I know the person you're with isn't your husband, but you've had 7 of them or whatever. And how that moment where God speaks over her and changes everything in her life. She comes to Jesus. A town actually encounters Jesus and is ministered to. Like, there's such a shift in the atmosphere in this one encounter at the well. And God's doing those kind of creative moments, those supernatural, like, hey, I know how to get all these people in the same room at the same time. Let's see what God can do in that space. And so it's so vital that we're a part of the Father's work. It's so important because how many of us like to be encouraged? I mean, I know that they weren't unbelievers, like we weren't bringing salvation to them, but man, just to be empowered to say, God knows where I'm at. He's ministering to me. He's changing things in my life. He's pouring his kingdom over me. He's speaking into my space that I need to be encouraged with, and that he was willing to like navigate the whole thing. I even was like, God, was I hungry just so I could end up in that Taco Bell? Like, is that how? I mean, he just works so seamlessly. Like all the places that we can like count as just a natural occurrence or a natural thought. And it's like God was doing so much more. It was very interesting because after we had that moment in Taco Bell, I was just like, I'm not even hungry anymore. That was so good. Like that was so rich and so filling of like his like thought. And when I thought about that, I was like, even Jesus told him, he's like, I've been doing the Lord's work. Like I'm full. And they're like, but you didn't even eat. I did eat my taco after, but I'm just saying like there's something that's so fulfilling and so rich with God when you're like walking in that pathway with him, walking in that attentiveness with him. Even when I was like praying over like the women, I felt it was like very interesting because I felt like the Lord was wanting me to encourage one of them specifically. And as I was like praying through it, I was like, okay, so this is for her. And then I said, well, what about the other girl? And God was like, well, you should give that to her too, because she's so hungry. Like she's so hungry for it. And so when I stopped, I said, like, I felt like this was for you, but God told me you were so hungry that I should like speak this over you as well. And she's like, I am so hungry. And I'm so hungry for what God is doing. And I was just like, he just wants to have a conversation with you about his sheep. He wants to talk to you about those that are on his heart. He wants to say, look, this is where they're at. This is what's happening. It's not awkward. It's not weird. It's just real. And that you actually, with like listening to the Lord, have the ability through the Holy Spirit to minister life and hope and freedom and healing to people. And we just have to participate with what's on the Father's heart. If you go back to verse 17 of John 5, it's the very end of Jesus encountering that man at the pool of Bethesda. And Jesus is speaking to them, and he says, and Jesus answered them, and he says, my Father is working until now, and I am working. And I think that there's a lot more kingdom work that you and me, we should be actively involved in our normal. Like, it's not just like go to church and then minister to people, but it's like minister to your family, minister to the person at the restaurant, minister to someone on the beach. You're there, like saying, God, is there anybody here that you need to, you want me to encourage or love on or bless or minister or lay my hands on so that they might be healed, or what's on your heart for where I'm at. And to have that understanding, that undercurrent in your life of like always listening, always being attentive to him, it can bring about some of the greatest fruit. I'm just saying, like, there's some really rich fruit in that space of like, that's super exciting. It's so exciting what God is doing. And it charges us up and it gets us so excited for what's next. And what is he going to do the next time that I step out in obedience? And how is he going to move in this space? And what will he do here? And so connect your heart to the Lord. Like, these are my testimonies from this like past trip. And that's, just being a couple days, like if we just live every day with that heart and that intent, even at home, what could the Lord do? Like, be excited, because when you start living the life that Jesus displayed in front of us, saying, okay, these are the things he did. He encountered people and people encountered him. He ministered life and hope and healing and freedom to people. He spoke into their space. He encouraged them, all the things. Like, we have that same God that lives in us, that we might participate in the kingdom. And so I'm calling you into participation with the kingdom. I'm putting pressure on you to say, like, let's do this. Like, don't make it something that's like out of the ordinary. Just make it part of your ordinary. Make it part of your life. Like, let it be the very essence of like, oh, this is what I'm called to do. I'm called to love people and to love God, to be obedient, to walk that out. And so I bless you. Maybe go back and read John 4 and then read John 5 and the story and say, okay, Lord, what does that look like for me? How do I live those circumstances out? Give me eyes to see and ears to hear what the Father's doing. Like, I want to live in that space. So I bless you, friends. I bless you that you might hear him today, that you might have an encounter that would encourage your soul, that would say, yes, this is what we're here for. Because like all the other things are like great, like going and sitting at the beach is fun. It's enjoyable, eating and having coffee is like fun. Doing this is fun, doing that. But participating in the kingdom is so much better than all of that. Just being a part of what God is doing on the earth. And so connect your heart to his heart. Say, Father, what's on your heart today? And that I might step into that. So go ahead and do it. Just have so much fun. Adventure. Find somebody, say, let's go and minister to someone today. Do you hear God's heart for someone? Whatever that looks like. Just, like, sometimes it's so much greater when you have two people doing it together. Pull your kids into that space. Go on a date night and say, God, we're going to minister to somebody tonight. Like, who can we minister to? Like, be active in just your normal life. I'm done saying all the things. I hope that you're thriving in your 30 minutes every day. I've been thinking about that and praying for you that in the word and worship and in prayer, that God is ministering and meeting you in that 30 minutes. And so I encourage you to keep going. Don't quit. Don't give up. And we'll see you next week.